Okay, let's jump right into this. When you think about ADHD, what's the first thing that probably, comes to mind?
Hmm.
For most people, I think it's framed as a disorder, isn't it?
Yeah, that's usually the label.
Something like being easily distracted, maybe a bit impulsive, trouble sitting still or concentrating for ages. It's generally seen as a deficit, right? Like a problem with the brain's wiring.
That's definitely the conventional view.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's often looked at through a medical or psychological lens as, well, an abnormality, something that needs managing or even fixing.
But our source material today, especially drawing from Dr. Lee Minsub's work like Genome Compass, it
Yeah.
really challenges that whole idea.
It really does. It's a fascinating perspective. He looks at these huge societal shifts, tech changes like AI, genomics,
Yeah.
and tries to understand them through our genes.
Exactly. And it's not just seeing genes as a static blueprint. He emphasizes the interaction, doesn't he, between genes, environment, our experiences.
Precisely. It's this dynamic interplay. And that helps explain why certain traits, maybe ones that seem difficult in one context, actually persist across generations. It gives us a radically new way to think about something like ADHD.
So that's our mission for this deep dive then, taking that viewpoint and applying it straight to ADHD. We want to explore its really strong genetic basis and then dig into this provocative idea. Maybe it's not an error at all.
Maybe not an abnormality.
Yeah, maybe it's more like an evolutionary strategy, something that's been part of humanity for a very long time. We'll trace it from, our deep past right up to the AI age.
And to really get that, we have to start with the genetics. The source makes it incredibly clear how much ADHD is influenced by our DNA.
It's pretty striking when you see the numbers. Heritability is cited as, 70 to 80%?
That's right, it's incredibly high.
Higher even than autism spectrum disorder, ASD. That's, wow.
And that high number immediately throws up a big evolutionary question, doesn't it? If a trait is genuinely a major disadvantage, if it really hurts survival, mating, reproduction, all the stuff natural selection acts on.
You'd expect it to fade out, right, over generations. It should be selected against.
Exactly. But here we have ADHD affecting, maybe 5 to 7% of people globally, according to the source estimates. It's highly heritable. It's widespread.
How could something so genetic, if it was curably bad, stick around for potentially millennia? That's where the evolutionary idea starts to make a lot more sense.
And the source points us towards a specific gene that might hold some clues. The DRD4 gene, dopamine receptor D4. Dopamine's crucial for reward, motivation, attention.
Right, dopamine. And it's not just the gene itself, but a particular version of it.
Exactly. There's a specific variant, an allele, known as the 7-repeat allele, DRD47R. And research has strongly linked this specific variant to behaviors we often associate with ADHD.
Okay, so what kind of behaviors are we talking about? What does having this DRD47R variant seem to nudge people towards?
Well, it's linked with being highly sensitive to new things in the environment, sort of a constant scanning, noticing changes.
Okay.
It's also tied to lower patience for delayed rewards, wanting the payoff sooner rather than later.
Uh-huh.
And importantly, it's connected to more exploratory behavior and a higher willingness to take risks. It's a whole pattern.
Sensitivity to novelty, impatience for delay, exploration, risk-taking. Okay, now the source brings in this really fascinating bit of evidence connecting this to evolution. Where do we tend to find this DRD47R variant more often?
The data points to it being significantly more common in nomadic populations compared to settled ones.
Nomadic, like groups that move around a lot.
Precisely. And the Kursk is a great example. A study on the Ariel tribe in Kenya. Some members live a traditional nomadic pastoralist life. Others have settled down into farming.
And what did they find with the DRD47R gene in that tribe?
They found the 7-repeat allele was indeed more common among the nomadic members.
Wow.
But here's the kicker. Within that nomadic group, people carrying the variant actually showed signs of better nutritional status.
Better. So an advantage.
It seems so in that specific context. The same advantage wasn't seen in the settled group, but for the nomads, this gene variant was linked to better survival or reproductive outcomes, essentially.
That's pretty powerful evidence. It really suggests this gene and the traits it influences could actually be beneficial in certain environments.
Exactly. It bolsters that whole evolutionary hypothesis.
Yep.
Genes linked to ADHD might have been genuinely advantageous in the kind of unpredictable, changing environments that define most of human history. Hunter-gatherer societies, specifically.
Let's try and picture that world, like the source suggests. What was survival like back then, say 50,000 years ago? What mattered most?
I mean, imagine it. Survival wasn't a given. You're constantly alert. Hearing a faint, weird sound could be prey or a predator. Smelling something unusual near camp is it spoiled food. Danger. Spotting faint animal tracks you don't recognize. That could be a vital opportunity.
So in that kind of world, being able to notice everything, to quickly shift your attention, scan constantly for anything new or potentially important, that's not a flaw, that's a survival skill.
Absolutely. Maybe deep focus on one thing was less critical for moment-to-moment survival than that broad environmental awareness.
So the source suggests the ADHD brain, as we call it now, might have just defaulted to an environment scanning mode.
Yeah, not necessarily unable to focus, but prioritizing external vigilance and quick response over sustained inward focus.
The source uses some modern examples too, right? Like a parent watching a kid near a road.
Perfect example. Their attention isn't fixed. It's sweeping, ready to react instantly. Or think of a night watchman. Their whole job is being super sensitive to tiny changes in a quiet, otherwise monotonous setting.
Makes sense. It's not about lack of focus, but maybe a different kind of focus-sensitive, rapid processing of incoming, changing stuff.
A system really optimized for detecting and reacting fast in a dynamic world.
Okay, so if these traits were potentially good for ages, how did we end up calling ADHD a disorder? What changed?
The source points pretty directly to the period after the Industrial Revolution. That's when society fundamentally reorganized itself.
Right. We moved into factories, schools, highly structured, predictable places.
Exactly. Factories needed repetitive tasks. Schools demanded sitting still, following linear instructions, concentrating deeply for long stretches. And suddenly, that brain, optimized for environment scanning, was in a world built for sustained, single-point focus and routine. The source make a key point here. The ADHD brain wasn't failing to adapt necessarily.
It just wasn't designed for that specific, very new environment.
Precisely. It's like you build a world demanding everyone climb trees perfectly, and then you label the expert swimmers as disordered because they're bad at tree climbing.
That's a great analogy. So ADHD only really looks like an abnormality when you judge it by the standards of these modern systems.
That's the argument. Systems that value sustained, unchanging focus above all else. Instead of a flaw, this perspective sees it as part of our evolutionary diversity. A different brain type that, for most of history, might have actually been more useful for the group's survival in unpredictable times.
It flips the script from something's wrong to this is different and maybe historically valuable.
Fundamentally, yes.
Which brings us right up to today and the future. How does this ADHD as strategy idea fit into the age of AI and automation we're in now?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting. The source highlights that those routine, predictable, repetitive tasks, the ones needing that sustained industrial era focus.
They're the exact tasks AI and automation are getting really, really good at.
Bingo. Machines are taking over the jobs that need us to sit still and do the same thing perfectly over and over.
So if machines do the routine stuff, what's left for humans? What becomes more valuable?
So Source talks about the rise of non-routine capabilities. Things like creativity, genuine innovation, thinking outside the box, making connections between unrelated ideas, and crucially, handling brand new, unpredictable situations quickly and effectively. That human flexibility and intuition.
Okay, and how does that connect back to ADHD traits, the DRD47R stuff?
Well, here's the potential twist for the AI age. Those very traits that seem like liabilities in the factory or the traditional classroom, the spontaneity, quick attention shifts, sensitivity to novelty, the drive to explore.
They could become strengths?
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
In a world that rewards adapting fast, thinking differently, pulling together information from lots of places quickly, navigating complexity, those traits might be incredibly valuable.
It's almost like the environment is shifting back towards needing that environment scanning mode, but maybe for information and ideas, not just physical stuff.
That's a really insightful way to think about it. Evolution isn't just a straight line. The source reminds us, survival strategies change as the environment changes. Hunter-gatherer skills were in factory skills, and factory skills might not be AI-age skills.
So deep focus was maybe the ideal before, but now, flexibility, quick reaction to new info, juggling multiple ideas, maybe that's becoming key.
The source suggests ADHD isn't just a historical relic or a disadvantage, but maybe a brain type with abilities particularly suited to this new dynamic landscape, a different operating system that could thrive alongside AI.
Wow. That really challenges how we tend to view human differences, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The takeaway from the source is pretty profound. Stop seeing differences like ADHD traits as just flaws to be fixed.
See them as diversity.
Exactly. As expressions of diversity in the human genome, a source of variabilities that might offer new ways to adapt, create, and survive as the world keeps changing. The idea that a hunter brain might be good for an AI world is, well, it's a complete reframing.
So pulling it together, the core argument here is ADHD isn't some genetic mistake that just happened.
No, it's presented as one of humanity's many survival strategies, encoded over vast evolutionary time, part of our species' rich genetic tapestry.
Which means we should really question that ingrained idea of it being just a defect or a problem needing a cure.
And maybe consider the alternative. Could these traits actually represent a needed ability now? A valuable skill set for the world technology is creating?
The source has this powerful message about the genome, doesn't it? That its main lesson is humans aren't meant to be all the same.
Yes. That diversity itself is the strategy for resilience, for survival of the species.
And that leads to a practical shift, especially with kids or adults. Instead of asking, why are they different? How do we fix it?
The source suggests asking, what are their strengths? What unique abilities or perspectives do they bring?
Because ultimately diversity, including ADHD, isn't a limitation. It's just a different expression of possibility.
A potential key, perhaps, to thriving in a future that's going to demand adaptation and new ways of thinking.
Okay, so we've really dug deep here. Started with ADHD as a disorder, looked at the strong genetics, explored that evolutionary advantage angle in the past, saw why it became labeled a problem later on, and now considered its potential in the AI age, moving from error to evolutionary diversity.
Yeah, and the core message from the source really lingers. Maybe ADHD isn't a mistake. Maybe it's more like a creative design left by evolution, a symbol of flexibility, of adaptive potential baked into our genes.
And it leaves you with a really compelling final thought, doesn't it? If the world is changing so fast, and if creativity, intuition, making new connections, adapting quickly skills machines find hard are becoming paramount, what other kinds of human diversity that we currently see as problems or challenges or disorders might actually be hidden strengths? What other different ways of thinking could be exactly what we need for the complex future ahead?